Well, hey, everybody. It's Tuesday, and that means politics on the Common Good podcast. I'm Dan, and we got Doug and Rob here, and we're just, trying to battle the constant doom scroll cycle that is the Trump administration. And I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, it's not going well. The doom is continuing to scroll. I'm continuing to spiral. And I think that's part of the Trump campaign administration regime's plan, is just this barrage of insanity, and it's working. That part's working. So,
Dan, I would agree with you, but the idea that these incompetent people could actually pull anything off still seems to be hard for me to quite handle. So
that is my one little ray of hope, is gosh, these guys are dumb.
Yeah,
they're so dumb.
Start a tariff war over the weekend and then quit as soon as you can on a Monday.
That actually leads right into. I mean, we're just going to kick it right off. I wanted to start with a confession today.
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person that when I am wrong, I want to be able to own that. I want to be able to say very publicly that, hey, listen, I was just completely wrong. And, maybe in the process of being wrong, I in some way have, bore false witness against my neighbor. And so I just want to come, to this podcast, the place where I made statements, and just say, hey, I was completely wrong. And I own that, and I confess that. And, I will try to be better going forward. Last week on this podcast, I compared and contrast the first Trump administration with the second Trump administration. And I said that one of the things I would say throughout the first Trump administration is that they were cruel, and they are corrupt, and they were incompetent. And I said, based on what we had seen so far, I said that the cruelty's still there, the corruption's still there, but they seem more competent this time around. And I just want to confess to everybody that I was wrong. I bore false witness against the Trump administration. They are, in fact, as incompetent as they've always been. And I apologize for calling them competent, because you start a trade war with Mexico and then back down when Mexico agrees to do the very thing that they're already doing. You start a trade war with Canada and then back down when Canada agrees to do the very thing they're already doing. You get into a little tariff threat with Colombia, and you back down.
Mm-hmm.
You send out an email saying that you're going to, give early retirement to all the federal workers that resign. And then those who replied that they'd like to resign never hear back from you again. You put out an executive order followed by a memo saying that you're going to have a freeze of all federal funding with grants and whatnot. And then you rescind it a couple of days later after the pushback. I mean, what we're seeing here is, and this is all, horrible, airline tragedies happening as well. So all to say, this administration is just as incompetent this time around as it was the first. And so I humbly confess bearing false witness against the Trump administration.
Well, thank you, Rob. I mean, it means a lot to all of us. And I've got a list of other things I thought I could bring up with you if you were interested in going through a list of things.
But here's the thing: the incompetence is still there, but the the arrogance and the false sense of we can do all this stuff is off the charts, and that's what's scary. Is they'll launch 100 executive orders that are so dumb and so cruel, and 80 of them will get rescinded or backtracked because no one likes them. They're illegal. They don't have the authority to do any of this stuff. But some of them will slide under the radar and stick and do real damage to real people in our country and our economy. And that's the problem.
And the thing that they don't seem to take seriously is there's a difference between being a candidate, not a campaign, and saying you're going to do something and then actually doing it. Because when you are the president and you say on Saturday night, we're going to put tariffs in place for all products coming out of Mexico and all products coming out of Canada, effective immediately, there are real people who spend their real time having to figure out the implications of that.
Yeah.
The stock market, which some days I could not care any less about, clearly said to the Trump administration, this is a failure of grand size and scale. Now, did Trump know that he was going to pull it back Monday? Probably. That's why he announced for tariffs to go into place on Saturday night, right? Because nothing can happen on a Sunday. But people spent their Sunday having to figure out what they're going to do in light of the fact that the economy is about to take a major shift for, again, no purpose that anyone can understand.
Right.
And that's the difference with this crowd, is they don't think that what the president does is actually causing impact if it doesn't do the worst version of what it could do. I heard people supporting Trump yesterday saying, the tariffs didn't even go into place. What are you all so wound up about? It would be like coming into someone's house and saying to them, maybe I'll just bust up all your stuff here in the house. And the person freaks out and starts calling for help, and people come over, and then you walk away and people catch you down the street and say, hey, what were you doing over there in that house threatening to break everything? Like, well, I didn't do it. So what's the big deal? Well, the people who believed you that you were going to do it because you're the president of the United States and said by executive order, this is now in place, had to respond. That does real damage. Every executive order that has to be litigated does real damage. Every promise to federal employees that's broken, every pulling back money from USAID, even if they put it back in, does real damage. This is the part Trump supporters, and if you have Trump supporting friends, please just ask them, do they think that the bullying and the chaos is what they voted for? And some of them will say, yes, I promise you. I know them. I've people in my family and friends. That is exactly what they're proud of. Good. He's bullying them around. Well,
because that's what you do to your allies and your neighbors. You bully them for no reason.
Yeah. And you know what else strong companies, strong businesses, strong countries, strong people don't need to do? Bully. Because you're strong.
Yeah.
Right? That's why. That is why. And it's not even bullying, actually, to just say you're going to threaten to break everything unless we get our way, and then you get the same way you already had.
Yeah.
Or in the case of Mexico, 5,000 less soldiers at the border than the Biden administration asked for and had. 5,000 less. What a negotiator. What a charmer.
Yeah. And what's wild is to watch Fox News commentators and elected officials in the Republican Party say, wow, what a victory for Trump. He did it. He played hardball and everyone caved, and we didn't even have to do the tariffs.
Yeah, there's one caveman.
What?
There's one caveman, and it's
yeah, but they didn't cave. Like, that's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what the example is, but it's they agreed to do the thing they are already doing.
Trump caved, right?
Trump caved, and yet it is portrayed by him and his sycophants as this great victory. And I'm looking at it going, what? No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
You made a threat. They said, don't do that. You say, okay, I won't do that if you do this. They go, well, we're already doing that. So, okay.
Yeah.
And then you back off. You did not win this. You did
Yeah,
not
they
win that.
rewrapped the birthday gift and gave it to you for Christmas, and you acted like it was a big surprise.
Yeah,
And you'll
seriously.
watch news anchors say that exact thing to these, talking heads. Be like, well, now they're more serious about it.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
So fair enough. Look, Trump supporters are going to toot the trumpet. They're going to be supportive no matter what, for sure. But the rest of us, we know that is not what happened. And every time
trumpet is a bit big, I would think, bugle might be more.
Bugle. You're going to play the bugle. Bugle boy.
Need something smaller for those tiny hands.
I'm talking about what you said they were tooting.
Well, they're trumpeters. I like that you have this on the screen, Dan, for those who are watching this in the video version, which you can do over on our YouTube channel. Trump saying they, referring to both Canada and Mexico, owe us a lot of money. I'm sure they're going to pay. I heard it from Trump dozens of times. They owe us money. The deal that he's bragging about is they put soldiers at the border and they agreed to do more in Canada to stop the 48 pounds of fentanyl that has come into the United States from Canada. Nothing about money. This was all supposed to be, they owe us money. There's a big imbalance. We've been funding Canada. We've been funding Mexico. Okay, where's the money? Okay, Don, show us the money. How much money is coming from Mexico into the U.S. Treasury? Because that's what you promised. That's what you said it would accomplish. That was the point of the tariff. Now they're acting like the point of the tariff was simply soldiers on the border and a intervention plan in Canada to stop the fentanyl traffic, which has produced all of 48 pounds.
Not coming through Canada.
Which is not coming through Canada.
And one of my favorite parts about this.
But there's no money there.
Right.
The whole point was they're ripping us off. The end of this negotiation, according to Donald Trump, they are still ripping us off.
Which is great because I've heard Trump repeatedly say, we have this terrible deal. It's the worst deal anyone's ever made. Trump made the deal. He scrapped NAFTA and signed into law this deal with Mexico and Canada, which is basically NAFTA revisited. He made the deal that now he says is the worst deal ever
been made.
It's such a bad deal that he has to create a trade war with our nearest neighbors and allies.
And then literally the shortest war in the history of wars. I mean, it's less than a 48-hour war, trade war. He caved immediately. This is one where we got this delay, and then we both are like, "You go," and then, but this is one where I don't even know what I was saying. What were we even talking about?
This is one where.
Yeah, I got that part.
Got the trick.
You go. Yeah, I lost it.
When I was a kid, I was promised that I would witness on ABC Sports on a Saturday afternoon, Evel Knievel flying over the Snake River Canyon.
Yeah, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat.
And I had watched many Evel Knievel stunts, but this was the big one. A rocket on his motorcycle, and he was going to fly over the Snake River Canyon. I think in Utah. In Utah? Do you remember seeing it, either of you?
I have a vague. I feel like I have some memory, but it's very, very vague.
Like a lot of childhood traumas and memories, mine could be the specifics could be off. But here's what I remember: he comes shooting down this really long ramp, and the engines on the motorcycle fire, and he starts to take off, and his back wheel is barely off of that ramp when he pulls the parachute. Like, he pulled that parachute within half a second. He was never going to try to fly that Snake River Canyon because he wasn't going to make it. They set this whole thing up, and he just pulls the chute. And it was a childhood moment for at least a generation of, mid-50s and maybe older people in this country who were like, oh, yeah, it was just a stunt to get you to watch. Now, here I am 40 plus years later, 50 years later, still talking about it. So well done, Evel Knievel. You pulled that one off. That's Donald Trump on pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Rev it up, fire up the engine, get the cameras to point at you. And the minute there's actually something that puts anything at risk, he pulls the camera or he pulls the parachute.
Yeah.
And that's it. And he's out.
And the problem with that is when you keep pulling stunts on your allies and your trade partners that you depend on to be strong and secure and prosperous as a nation, you piss off the people that help you get there. And that is terrible for business. It's terrible for international relations. It's just dumb. Like,
yes,
it's just shooting yourself in the foot.
Don't you think this is what it could be about? He knows that Canada and the leaders of Canada never supported him. He knows that the leaders of Mexico spoke badly about him and thought they could rickroll him. So he went after him.
Oh, yeah. It's petty.
This is not just he thinks that there's actually an imbalance in trade and we're spending too much money. He is going after people who he thinks have made him look bad, have embarrassed him, have shown his true light, and that's what it's about. And I don't think any time we can look past Donald Trump's behavior, utilizing the presidency for any purpose other than how is it settling a score?
Yeah.
Yep, totally.
Yeah, you don't have to look very far or very deep into his motives.
Can we downgrade to the hire from the administration that shows that they're protesting about wanting to hire the best people and most competent people is also just a scam, and that is to talk about the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance?
Oh, see, I was going to go to all the other nominees that they're putting up.
So many. Well, I mean, to be lectured by this guy that what's most important is that we hire the most competent people. Really? That's
rich. That's rich, bud.
That's your argument. The most competent people.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I do. Okay, I'll do.
Yeah, I am ready for that JD Vance thing.
Okay. I also have a confession,
and
it's about RFK Jr. I said a week ago, he's going to get confirmed. He's going to get walked through. But I think today, Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican, who's on the Senate Finance Committee that has to approve and push RFK Jr. through to the full Senate confirmation, could vote to not confirm him out of the committee.
Well,
and there's 14
before
Republicans.
You get too far into this rant, it's already happened. And
what did he do?
And RFK has been voted through.
No,
really?
Yeah. Okay, so the moment I try to just show some humility and say I was wrong, I couldn't even.
You
do
can't.
It.
You just can't.
I would like
even when you try to be wrong,
you're
right.
Yeah, I would. So Bill Cassidy pushed him through. Do you know? Okay, we can get to the details later. Okay, back to the less competent person in this conversation, and that is J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is a person who is professing a new connection to the Christian faith. He's a new convert to Catholicism, which is interesting because he was a Christian person in college attending a Lutheran campus ministry at the Ohio State University. But anyway, he's had a lot of opportunities around Christianity, but has a new experience with a kind of conservative Catholicism. So when this man decides he wants to use his position as president to tell vice president to tell us how the country should be, fair enough. And when he wants to tell us about how he views the world, fair enough. And when he wants to traffic in utilizing the teachings of Christianity to give support for his ideas, well, then the Common Good podcast would like to provide him a little bit of support. So here's J.D. Vance talking with Sean Hannity from Fox News. And he is talking about how Donald Trump is the one who really loves the immigrants and is doing the best for them. And that we have to get our priorities right in the United States, and that the left gives more compassion to immigrants than it does to its own citizens. And they're not going to stand for it any longer. This is his big argument. This is the point that he's trying to make. And in making that point,
before we roll the tape, can I just make a prediction and hope that I have not seen this video, so I'm looking forward to it. I hope he says the Bible says that God helps those who help themselves.
Well, you could be slightly disappointed, but it's in that vein, in the sense that, oh yeah, you got this all wrong. All right, here it is, the vice president of these United States of America.
And as an American leader, but also just as an American citizen, your compassion belongs first to your fellow citizens. It doesn't mean you hate people from outside of your own borders, but there's this old school, and I think it's a very Christian concept, by the way, that you love your family, and then you love your neighbor, and then you love your community, and then you love your fellow citizens in your own country. And then after that, you can focus and prioritize the rest of the world.
Yeah, really? Really? That's
break my keyboard over my own head.
I think this is a very Christian idea, that you first start by loving your family. Jesus suggests that you should leave your family and follow him, but not in J.D. Vance's Christian world. First your family, then your neighbor, then your community. Where that came from, then your citizens in this country, and then and only then the world.
Yeah.
For God so loved, how does that go? For God so loved you and your family. I mean, this is the kind of stuff. And then another Catholic man, True Faith, Sean Hannity, sits there. Yeah, that's how it goes. That's the story of America. The story of America is you first, then your community, then your fellow citizens, and only if you got room, then and only then.
And that's what the Good Samaritan was all about. That story is taking care of yours first. But like
Greater
usually
love
there's
no one than someone who lays down his life for his friends.
Usually there's like a verse taken badly out of context to use as justification. But I can't think of anything that even gets close to this idea unless it's like Judea to the end of
Samaria and the uttermost parts of the earth. That spreading of the gospel described in, what is it, in the end of Matthew or the beginning of Acts, I can't remember which, where Jesus talks about like, this is from Jerusalem to Judea and Samaria to the ends of the earth. And there's kind of this like ever expanding sense. It's not that like you only care, like it's much more a description of how this is going to play out as this thing flows outward. It's not a prescriptive thing of like, hey, and at what point do you love your family enough that you can then move on to your neighbors?
Because apparently you can't do any of them simultaneously.
Yeah. And you know, Jesus very clearly told us to love our neighbors. You know, and that's good. Jesus also very specifically told us to love our enemies.
As you love yourself.
And that didn't make the list of, unless enemies are the other countries that are out there. That didn't make the list. I mean, Jesus's thing, with the exception of the Good Samaritan parable, was like a very like it was not, you know, based in the country that you lived in. It's just like, it was not a geopolitical kind of thing. Oh my goodness.
Well,
Yeah.
and look, he could be right in making the argument this is a Christian notion, because there are a lot of Christians who have taught this.
Yeah. I hear it
It's
from a
not
lot of
a-
Christians.
Yes. So in that sense, yes, JD, you have been mistaught. And you've heard it from a lot of your Christian friends, and the Christian communities you have selected to be part of have told you that. But that does not comport with the Jesus narrative. It doesn't comport with biblical teaching. So if you don't want that, I get it. You don't have to have it. You
Right.
can skip your Jesus, you can skip the Bible, you can give it all up and just live in your own Christian cult community that has its own set of rules for how people are supposed to engage with one another and the world. Fair enough. But know that that's what you're doing. And fellow followers of the way of Jesus, know that this guy is talking to another guy on Fox News and telling all the Fox viewers, this is what I understand to be the Christian view. And we should let him know, nope.
No.
It is so fundamentally opposite. It's just
Yeah.
Freaky Friday, opposite of the whole point of Christianity.
Yeah.
What are the greatest commandments? Love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, who is my neighbor? Well, let me tell you a story about who your neighbor is. There's somebody who's from a different culture than yours, and they're being abused and they're being hurt, and then you help them and you care for them. That's who your neighbor is.
Even
That's
when
the
it's
Good
an
Samaritan
inconvenience to you.
I
But
mean,
what's wild is it doesn't actually matter if you shrink down the concentric circles and say, okay, well, why don't we help the poor single mothers in your own town, in your state, by funding these programs? Oh, well,
Nope.
that's a handout from the government. That's not like, what? Like, okay, so it's not actually about helping anyone. You're just using this as Bible washed cover for not helping people. Got it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like,
yeah. And look, I mean, I went to Promise Keeper stuff and listened to those folks, if you know that community and that group and their teaching. And it was very much, you've got to start in your heart and then in your house and then on your street. It's built around this kind of idea. And if you don't know much about how human development works and how communities function and all that, you might think, well, I don't know, that probably makes sense. That's not actually how it works. If you have a boundary of your love and your compassion pre-established for anyone, you have failed the project of compassion. That's the whole point that Jesus teaches, is do not have a boundary around it. Adhere J.D. Vance. And again, if he just wants to speak as the vice president, fair enough. But don't invoke the Christian narrative unless you want Reverend Buddy from the National Cathedral to come and do a Bible study with you on compassion, which I'm sure she'd be glad to do. Or, I don't know, tune into a podcast when you got a little bit of time sitting around in your government paid for housing.
Yes, the story of the Bible from beginning to end, the integrative motif, the overarching story of the Bible, is one of ever increasing inclusion. Over and over and over again, human beings are deciding who is in and who's out. And over and over again, they find out that the people that they had on the outside were actually in all along. Like, that's the story of the Bible. It like from the Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament, all the way into the New Testament. This is the story of the Bible, of ever increasing inclusion. And it's not that the inclusion, like, it's not that more people are being included. It's that people are realizing, oh, everybody's included. And
Them
JD
too.
Vance is actually, advocating for an approach to, in the name of Christianity and in the name of Jesus, something that is actually the exact opposite of what the story is.
Yeah. Just back asswards.
yeah.
Look, if he wants to be Jonah you can be Jonah. You remember the Jonah story? Often
Yeah.
mistold, often
Oh,
misunderstood.
total.
Jonah
Just
receives
the
his blessing from God that for his community, and then is told, "I want you to go preach to the Ninevites." Jonah's like, "Nope, I hate the Ninevites. I'm not going to preach to the Ninevites because I know if I go tell the Ninevites about the compassion of the Lord, they will change their ways and join this same community. And I don't want them to." So gets on a boat and makes a run for it. Then the storms stir up and the people are like, "Oh, who did it? That guy did it. We know because the gods are angry." They throw him over. It gets put inside of a fish and gets saved after 3 days of living in the ocean, and then goes and preaches to the Ninevites, and they follow the way of the Lord. And then Jonah goes and sits under a tree and says, "I would rather now die than live in a world where those people are part of the story of God's grace." That's Jonah. The whole point is at the end, he says, "I should just sit here. I would rather die." JD Vance, you might want to say that you first start with your family, and then only if there's some extra does your compassion finally extend to the outsider. I'd like to introduce you to the Bible because it might just contribute a little bit more to widening your eyes. And sir, your eyes could use a little widening.
Yeah. They want the Bible to be in every classroom, but they don't want to actually read it.
That's so good right there. Could you, I'm beginning to wonder because I've never checked. What is in the Trump Bible? Is it possible that Jesus says to his followers?
Yeah.
Is it like the Jefferson Bible?
Yeah. Is it like the Jefferson Bible? Like maybe people might not know that Thomas Jefferson did not believe that Jesus was divine, did not believe that any of the miracles happened. And so he went through the Gospels and simply snipped out the parts that he didn't think actually happened, and constructed a Bible that was consistent with his faith.
Very presidential.
Has Donald Trump done that too?
Did he try to sell copies? I didn't hear if he tried to.
And JD Vance has a version where he's like, "Love the Lord your God and then start with your family. Take care of you first." Like you're on an airplane, Jesus says. And when the oxygen mask comes down, make sure you secure yours first. You'll understand that later, Jesus turns to the disciples with a wink and says. I mean, it's just this guy and the ease to which it's and the confidence of it.
Of it, like smugness.
And I actually think it's a very Christian notion too. And see, here's how it actually works.
Yeah.
I mean, and also, look, JD Vance has made a lot out of his own pedigree. So I think his pedigree he wants us to talk about. So let's talk about it for a minute. His whole pedigree is built around the idea that he experienced a very difficult life living in Appalachia and a very difficult set of circumstances because the environment that was producing narcotics hooked up his mom in that world. And so he grew up with a mom who he says he nearly lost because of her connection to opioids. And he lived in an area and wrote a whole book about it. And then was turned into a whole movie and a whole way of saying, hey, we have to change the system and the structure. And then he has the gall to say, you know where your compassion should first start? Just with your family and then with your citizens and your community. Oh, really, JD? Do you think that would have worked for you? Do you think the solution to the problems that you've been arguing about for decades would have been solved with that thing you just talked about? Or are you just trying to come up with an excuse for why the left, who seems to care about the least of these that are inside the United States, has their priorities backward? And that is, Dan put it earlier, is rich. For you to suggest that the left has the priorities wrong for caring about those who are least advantaged. I mean, this guy truly.
Because that's woke. And loving just your family first, and then maybe your neighbor in your actual neighborhood. That's American.
I mean, truly, it's the thing he says at the end that's so galling to me. Then and only then. like, oh, Mr. Priorities and Mr. First Things First. Really?
And as if the
Does he know
greatest
what-
quote
does he
unquote
know what
nation in the world.
missionaries do?
That the greatest country, the wealthiest country the world has ever seen, can't do two things at once. It can't help its own citizens while also feeding hungry people around the world.
Mhm.
Those are mutually exclusive. We can't do one until we accomplish the first.
Yeah.
Just, are we that weak? Are we that, like, it doesn't make sense even in their
No.
weird logic.
Doesn't even make sense. But and it just so you don't think this is just rhetoric that JD Vance has put out, the Trump administration has specifically targeted Lutheran social services.
Yeah.
The arm of the Lutheran global community that does relief work and resettlement work and helps refugees and people all over the world has targeted it to have all of its funding removed. They're going, if you don't think the Trump administration is specifically going after religious communities, the list is already being made and the monies and the attacks are already underway. They are attacking church communities.
Yeah. Which sort of brings us to Elon Musk, whose team now has been granted full access to the federal payment system. So the checkbook that funds almost everything that we do as a country, all the aid, all the social security checks, paying contractors that are doing work, all that.
Yeah.
This unelected oligarch now has access to all of it and gets to decide what checks should go out and what ones are wasteful in his eyes.
Yeah. And the argument for this whole thing is because bureaucrats are currently doing that. That's their argument. And they're so appalled that a human being has to make decisions about the allocation of dollars to be sure that it meets the specifications that Congress has set out for those dollars, that a person has to do that job, and they call them a bureaucrat, also called an employee, who takes an oath of diligence to do that in a way that would comport with the law. They're so bothered that those people exist that their solution is to put in another person to replace all of those people for that one person to do it. How does that make any sense? If your problem is there's people who aren't doing their job right, there's a whole process for that. But if you don't want people making the decision as bureaucrats, then why put in a new bureaucrat? This is the thing about all the Trump solution, all the Trump claims of crisis, and then a solution is almost always a version of the current crisis. And they've done it here again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had the opportunity to speak on Sunday with a federal employee who works in the VA and system, and he received one of the take the early retirement offer and resign email. He is had his private personal information accessed, or at least the ability to have it accessed by Elon Musk and his merry band of teenagers that's helping him take over these servers, where in the OMB, the Office of Management and Business, or whatever it is, it's essentially the HR department of the federal government. Musk's team has full access to that system now, and now Elon Musk has full access to the ability of this person to get paid, and all federal disbursements to be made. the level of anger and despair about this is just so profound. And what he says, listen, all of us who are federal employees take an oath to the Constitution.
Yes.
Our loyalty is to the Constitution of the United
Yep.
States. It is not to a president. It is certainly not to the president's billionaire buddy. It's to the Constitution of the United States. And it's just there's a helplessness, I think, that people are feeling about, like, what do we do? And you see online, you see conversation, well, Congress needs to do something, Congress needs to do something. Well, Democrats don't control either house of Congress. So it will take Republicans doing something. And as we know, that's not going to happen. It is, and this is, we're back to this is the kind of thing, when you start going down this road, you get to that doom spiral that Dan was talking about, of like, oh my goodness, like, how are we going to get out of this mess?
Yeah.
Do you all think it's particularly troublesome? And because I don't care who Elon Musk is. I don't care if he owns, stake in a bunch of companies that value him with a bunch of money. I don't care. Like, the idea that he's an oligarch, which isn't even a category. He's just a super rich guy that has access to a lot of things that he's part owner of. I don't care who it is. Now, I do wonder why that guy wants to be snooping around in there. But I don't really care who it is. I want to know anybody who's like, hey, I'd just like to have access to the system that delivers federal payments. Can you just let me sneak around and see what's going on in there? The very desire for that access is, I think, what makes this thing troubling.
Yeah.
Because the idea of who it is, like, I don't want somebody trustworthy being like, let's remove all the people Rob just described. Federal employees with high levels of training, have made it, have taken an oath, have a supervisory structure over them, have been vetted to the point that they've demonstrated that they're someone who's trustworthy. Replace that with anybody is a problem. And then wondering why that guy, who's actually got some companies to be running, some other stuff to do, is noodling around. That's where you really start to ask yourself, what's he doing in there? But I think this thing about, well, it's Elon Musk and he's going to, I don't know. I don't know if that should be particularly concerning.
Yeah, I think it's concerning that it's anyone that is handpicked by Trump to noodle around in this system. I think Elon Musk makes it worse because he has the monetary power and influence to throw more weight around and get his way. Where if it's a nobody, if it's just a team of 6, early 20s coders that you give access to, someone's going to say, no, you can't do that. Like, get out of here, kid. But if it's the richest person in the world, that does get some things done that might not otherwise.
It kind of reminds me of, Rob, that conversation we had last week where was saying that there's no person Donald Trump can appoint to any office that's going to be less competent to do their job than Donald Trump is competent to do his. He is the most incompetent person with the most power. And that's the thing we should recognize every time this happens. If RFK Jr. takes over control of the Health and Human Services and you're like, I don't think the guy with that pedigree and those perspectives should be in charge of that government agency. You also have to say, and Donald Trump should not be in charge of the executive branch of the federal government as the president of the United States. Like, he is already the worst. The idea that Donald Trump is like, hey, no, we're looking over it. Elon Musk reports to me and he doesn't do anything I don't give him permission to do. That doesn't help me at all. That is just like, so it doesn't matter who it is. And one more thing about Elon Musk. No one has ever said this man is good at fixing a bureaucracy, capable manager. a person who has skill sets that could be utilized for the benefit of a sophisticated system, like how does the federal government decide to allocate money that's been allocated by Congress? What on earth gives anyone the impression that this guy is good at that?
Mm-hmm.
Twitter? I mean, the people
or that
who
he's
work
good
the
at
companies
auditing complex budgets.
Yes. The companies that he owns, the companies that his worth is built around, the people who run those companies are like, that guy, he is not helpful. That's not even his specialty. And this idea that like the thing that gives him access to all this is because, well, he's very successful at his work.
Mm-hmm.
No, it just doesn't work that way. That because you're really good at one thing, the specialty level of people who are good at running a bureaucracy of any level, especially of a federal government, these are true professionals in their field, right? I mean, at a professional level, you can't take a first baseman in baseball and ask him to be the pitcher or the catcher. They won't be able to do it. They are so good at what they do. They are in the fractional number of human beings, like the number of human beings that can be a Major League Baseball first baseman or shortstop is a countable number of people, right?
Yep.
And I'm
they
curious.
can't do the sport. They can't do the other position in the sport. Why do we think that just because he's good at something, he should be noodling around and figuring out what all the bureaucrats apparently couldn't quite figure out? Mm-hmm. It's so ridiculous.
And while they're like targeting quote unquote waste and fraud, I'm curious when they're going to grow up here and start looking into the military industrial complex and all the waste and fraud there. Like, are they going to get started on that? All the, $2,000 toilet seats and the $1 billion airplanes that don't work right. Is Elon in charge of that too? When do they get started there? Because that's where the real money is.
Yeah.
But they're not going to touch it.
Yes. Oh, that's a great point. And if we've gotten to the point in the country where our allocation of trillions of dollars is clicking along, working the way we want, and all we're down to now is let's just figure out a little bit of waste and fraud and kind of, tuck that in. Just a little tuck around the eyes. I feel like the rest of it's kind of right there. Let's just work on these little wrinkles right here. If that's what we're doing, we're down to now the waste and fraud. We're down to the 5 or 7 or 10 or 12% of the huge federal budget, and we're going to fix that, and then we're going to be cooking. That's what Trump thinks he inherited. He thinks he inherited a federal government and an economy that really what it needs is to be sure that we're not spending too much money on some fictional thing that they've been told we're spending money on, and then things are going to work. What's the outcome if this works?
Right.
You get rid of all the waste and fraud. The Treasury says, oh, we don't have to print that extra money we thought we were going to print that was allocated in the budget. And in 7 years, we'll amortize that over all the budgets and make sure that there's no new waste and fraud. Like we're down to waste and fraud. That's the big thing. You think that's the big problem?
That we're helping too many people in other countries as well. Like that's where we got to cut back because we can't afford it.
Yeah.
And that will make American lives better. You're not going to spend more money here. We already know you're not going to do that.
Yeah. This is Doug, you're making an amazing argument that I've never heard someone make, and that's that waste and fraud is no big deal. I mean, you're not wrong. It's just the people think the exact opposite. Like it is the idea of cutting waste and or fraud is like that is bipartisan red meat. And you're just like, yeah, but
we were
it's one of those things of like, maybe it's majoring on the minors. Like we got, yes, waste and fraud is a problem, but let's address some of the really big problems first.
Okay, let me give a little example of this. Some people who attend churches and might be on a council or something for a church remember around this time of year, you have an annual meeting. And at the annual meeting, they come out with the budget for the year and you vote on a bunch of things depending on your system and how much people know. And I was in one of these meetings last week on Sunday, and we talk about the whole budget. And it's a church, so it's not that complicated. But by God, you would think we were running $1 trillion budget at churches the way we, no matter what the church size, the people are just going to talk about this stuff like, wow, we're running a $400,000 budget here. Let's make sure we really got our hands on it. And, 90% of the money goes to 4 things, right? But still. And then a question comes up in the Q&A time. Hey, I was looking at section 5240 on here, and 5240 says that there's $200 been allocated for refreshments, and seems like we spend more than that. Could we figure out where that money's coming from? And then somebody else says, well, actually 5240, that's the income side of the line. 4240 is the corresponding budgetary outgoing flow, and that amount is this much. And do you think we could adjust that amount so that this money coming in, we spent 7, 8, 9 minutes of people's time talking about a couple $100, because it would be really great if we had no waste in our budget. Can we just shore that all up? 90% of the budget. Let's not talk about that, because it's fine actually. But let's make sure that we just figure out, is there any waste or fraud?
But here's the thing with this whole waste and fraud debate is they're lumping in things like providing food for starving people as waste.
Yes.
And so
yes, Mike Flynn referred to the Lutheran Social Services as a religious money laundering system. Like that, that's what they're talking about. Yeah, it is.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. But it's also, so last night I was watching CNN, Abby Phillip show. They had a congressperson on. I think she's from New York. She was going on about, you guys are mocking us, saying that there's not all this waste and fraud inside USAID. And we know that there is. We know that $50 million or 50, some huge number of money was spent on condoms in Gaza.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And she goes, you guys are all saying, I've seen the budget line, she says. And then Abby Phillip says, Congresswoman, that's not true. 0 money has been spent on that. That's totally fabricated. And then Abby Phillip said, in fact, Donald Trump upped the number today, saying it was $100 million. It's 0. There is none. She felt a little sheepish, the Congress, and then said, well, there's still a lot of waste.
Yeah.
My point is, look, I don't know. If you're spending $50 million, people would be like, that is so much money. In the federal budget, come on. You could get rid of all of the waste, all of the fraud. It's going to make no difference. You're in a dirty kitchen and you're going around sweeping up crumbs. The problem in our federal budget is how we choose to spend the big money, Dan, that you're talking about. So you could spend all your time hunting around. That's why we have bureaucrats who spend their time figuring out, do we got a little waste? Do we have a little fraud? Did we spend too much money on a gold toilet? Why do we actually have gold toilets? And we obsess about these toilet seats. Meanwhile, the whole system and structure is not servicing the American people. So I just find it utterly nonsense that the American people continue to say to Congress, could we just fix the waste and fraud problem? Not the primary allocation problem, not the fact that we don't give enough money to support states, that we don't pay for special education in our schools, that we don't make sure that our transportation and health systems are funded, not that we don't take care of the things we need to take care of, but we want to make sure that some money is not accidentally, being siphoned off the side. And if anybody shouldn't be in charge of getting rid of waste and fraud, it's Donald J. Trump, the convicted felon for fraud. Honestly.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills every morning. What is happening?
Yeah. Couple of, shifting gears a little bit, couple of executive orders either signed or in the works.
Oh boy.
First of all, the elimination of the Department of Education, which can't be done via executive order.
Oh, the elimination.
And also the creation of a sovereign wealth fund for the United States.
Oh yeah.
So
What is the sovereign wealth fund?
Yeah, what do
and
they
why
think
would
that
the United-
is?
yeah, a sovereign wealth fund is basically a pot of money that a country can use on different projects and things for the betterment of its people. So Saudi Arabia, for instance, has one that they have used to attract soccer teams and create a golf a golfing, what do they call them, league or whatever, to compete with the PGA, to bring people and interest to Saudi Arabia. China has one. Many countries have them, and they use them, to do things that will improve the lives of the people in their countries. Donald Trump is created and typically they're funded by taxes, and some kind of special designation, tax on tourism, tax on something, will fund that. Will fund that for these countries. The creation of this sovereign wealth fund is, in my estimation, it seems to me that this is some way for the Trump administration to get a pot of money that it can use as a slush fund. There's immediate conversation that it will be used for the U.S. government to buy a piece of TikTok. Or there's conversation that it will be used to, maybe make some purchases in Greenland or in Panama. It's basically, a slush fund for the Trump administration to, throw some money at the pet projects that they're interested in. It's something that
without having to go through Congress for approval.
Exactly.
And budgeting.
Exactly.
In the United States of America, we have certain sectors of our economy, and we've decided which sectors are going to handle which portions. So we have a business sector, we have a charity sector, we have a government sector, and they all work together. Mm-hmm. In the United States, we've put a lot of weight on the charity sector. In other countries, they refer to charities, what we call nonprofits in the United States. They refer to them as NGOs, non-government organizations, because in many other countries, the primary organizing philosophy is the government. So then organizations that are not government are described in contrast to the government, non-governmental organizations, NGOs. But in the United States, we don't begin with the government as our reference point. We begin with businesses. So we call our charities non-profits, not non-government agencies. It's a real, they're doing the same thing. They're both charities, but their references to the primary organizing philosophy in that country. In the United States, we have said the kinds of stuff that other countries do through sovereign wealth funds, we do through charities. This is an approach to try to replace charities with government. That's functionally what Trump is suggesting we do. And that should, look, if Barack Obama or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton had suggested this, these people would have lost their minds. expanding big government to do the kinds of things that our charitable arms should be doing. Because you know who puts together good for society golf leagues? Businesses and charities, not the government. The Trump world has completely lost track of what Republicans used to say is non-big government politics, and they are centralizing as much as possible into their control, and that should freak people out.
Yeah.
So we do not need another government agency to bring about the good for our society. We have a sector that's designed to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the party of small government keeps giving more and more power to one person. So I guess it's smaller in some ways.
Smaller hands. It's got smaller hands.
It's smaller in terms of the people who are in control.
Yeah.
Yeah, less people. When I ran for public office in 2010, my campaign was to run as an indie Democrat with an indie Democrat spirit. Because in 2010, I really did believe that no political party always has a right. I was going to run as a Democrat with an indie Democrat spirit, because I believed that independents, Democrats, and Republicans all had ideas and approaches that were unique to their political philosophy that could benefit the state of Minnesota and the country. And we should draw from the very best ideas from all of those traditions. I was very progressive, but also believed, hey, there's really good ideas that independents and Republicans have. My confession for the day, in the spirit of Rob Ryerson, is I was dead wrong about Republicans. Every idea these people have had since 2012 has been a bad idea.
Bad ideas.
It's just,
yes.
And I sit here with literal egg on my face, probably because my wife tells me I do keep food on my face. And I did have eggs just before this started, but probably with egg on my face, literally and certainly figuratively, to have to say, but the American people voted for them and for this guy in numbers that allowed him to take over the presidency. So granted, but it doesn't mean the ideas aren't terrible, because they are terrible. And a sovereign wealth fund, I mean, everything we've talked about today is just a series of bad. Now, obviously, Republicans think they're great ideas.
I don't think they do.
Based on what, I cannot imagine.
I think a lot of elected Republicans right now feel forced into this situation where they have to pretend these are all good ideas. You can even see it in the cabinet. Like, you can watch Marco Rubio try to spin like why these are good ideas, and you can just see him struggling because these are stupid things to do and say.
Yes, they're stupid things.
It's wild.
It is.
Can I just vent a pet peeve?
This is not the time or place, Rob. Just kidding.
The idea that Canada would be the 51st state.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Shall we?
No, hold on.
Go on. Yeah.
Go on.
Why wouldn't the provinces of Canada be their own states? Why would it be the 51st state and not a group of states joining the union?
He doesn't know.
Does not
that there are provinces. That. He doesn't recognize that landmass wise, it's the size of the country, that its population would give it an awful lot of voting. And as Gary puts in the chat, Americans already have enough liberal lunatics. We don't need 40 million more from Canada.
Yeah. Yeah. So Canada has, according to Google, 10 provinces. Why are we not talking about 60 states? Right? Like,
because it's moronic.
Saskatchewan is, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, I don't know. This is just something that bothers me. The idea that Canada would be the 51st state. No, Canada would be the 51st through the 60th states.
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't count all of those little cities that they call provinces in Donald Trump's mind, a whole state. They all have
we have Rhode Island.
Yeah, well,
It's the size of a postage stamp.
Doesn't know that. He doesn't know that either. And the fact that he wouldn't say, "Hey, should we work on Puerto Rico? Should we work on?"
Could we work on the U.S. citizens that don't have the ability to vote for president of the United States?
How about
like
Washington,
the millions
D.C.?
of people who live in Washington, D.C.?
I mean, if we're going to start to expand the states, shall we? And how do you think Canada is going to vote? You think Donald Trump would have still won this election had Canada been a state? Now, there are some very conservative.
They need to be states.
No,
Not state. It's not
like
one state. This is what's absolutely bothering me.
But it's because you seem to think that a province should be equal to a state. No. The United States considers other countries in the equation. A United States state equals an entire country. That's what you get. You don't get multiple states. Like if we take Mexico, we're not taking all those states as independent states. Mexico itself is just one. It's all just one.
But I was wondering if we could negotiate some sort of reverse of this. I live in Michigan. And what if Michigan became a province of Canada? You know what? Who's to say this can't go both ways?
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And the rationale for this, again, is they don't have any reason to exist on their own. Just let them be. I mean, give Canada a reason to exist.
Yeah.
That was the stated, written rationale by Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a reason to exist. Incredible.
Like short people.
You think that's what he's doing? You think he's just really doing a Randy
Newman?
Randy Newman. He's doing Randy Newman as the president. Canada has never reason to exist. We don't need them. We don't need their lumber. Well, then,
yeah.
Why did you need to renegotiate a trade deal?
Yep. And it's just
It's just so
all
moronic.
ridiculous. You got Super Bowl predictions?
Oh,
yeah, three-peat. There's no stopping it.
Oh, Kansas City.
Yeah. I did not want Kansas City to make the Super Bowl.
Didn't
for
either.
The third year in a row. I was rooting for Buffalo.
Yeah.
But now that they've made it, I would like to see history. I'd like to see the three-peat. And I have a lot of friends that are Chiefs fans, and I've rooted for the Chiefs the last few years in the Super Bowl because of that. But I'm getting a little tired of it.
Yeah, I don't hate the Chiefs. You know, I'm Travis Kelce. I'm a fan.
He's Cleveland boy.
But I'm kind of tired. I want a new narrative.
He's the boyfriend.
Yeah,
he's the boyfriend. I mean, has there been he's like a tight end or something?
Mm-hmm.
Has there ever been a time where a not quarterback has been such the center of the imagination of fans? Maybe the fridge back in the 80s for the Bears. Because last year I watched the Super Bowl.
Deion Sanders.
Okay.
Yeah,
we're going back.
There's a handful. I get your point's well taken. It's not common. It's much more common that the quarterback. But when the tight end dates, the most powerful woman on the planet.
Apparently not when it comes to politics. She couldn't move the number. She couldn't move the needle.
None of us could.
Yeah. Fair enough.
We tried harder than she did, and we didn't do it either.
For sure. She's just not any more powerful than we are. She just got lucky. She had rich parents that let her, cut her first album. I watched the Super Bowl last year, and at some point had to Google what happened to Kansas City's quarterback because I thought that Kelsey person was the quarterback. Like for whatever period of time he was famous before that, it was outside of my conception that this guy would be this famous and like,
And that
the
Taylor
team
Swift
is-
wouldn't be dating a quarterback.
And that the team is successful because of this person who's a tight end.
Oh, they're
There's
successful
no
because
team
of their
that's
quarterback too.
Yeah, right. Because that's why quarterbacks are so rare, and you can't win without a great one, Minnesota Vikings.
Yes.
Then why does everybody talk about that guy?
Because he's dating Taylor Swift, and because he and his brother both have big
dated Taylor Swift.
Big magnanimous personalities that
and podcasts.
They just feel like the kind of person
You'd
that everybody
like
would want to hang out with. Like that's
everybody, you think?
Yeah.
Save one, Sans one.
Yeah.
Could I get a pass on that group of everybody's? I mean, I honestly know nothing about the guy. He's got to be a great athlete if he's a professional football player, no doubt about it.
Yeah, he is. I believe he's past Jerry Rice for the most receptions and maybe touchdowns in the playoffs in NFL history. Like he's an exceptional talent with a globally famous girlfriend playing on a pretty talented team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People that I follow who don't, talk about sports, but I don't follow them for sports, but they bring it up. Say all this stuff that the powers that be will not allow the Kansas City Chiefs to not win.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's just general kind of corporate somehow conspiracy that's not very particular. Is there
No, it's very particular to the referees. There's been throughout the course of this season and previous seasons, remember a couple of years ago when the Kansas City Chiefs eliminated the Cleveland Browns from the playoffs, and there was a horrible non-call on a helmet-to-helmet hit. I don't remember that. There's times where the Chiefs seem to get, they used to, in basketball, there used to be a thing called the Jordan rules, where Michael Jordan seemed to get some preferential treatment because of who he was.
Of course.
There's some criticism of NFL officiating that the Chiefs tend to get some preferential treatment, either non-calls or calls going in their favor that might not go for, the Minnesota Vikings or the Jacksonville Jaguars.
But that's for nefarious, like someone
there's a
benefits.
sense that the league wants the Chiefs to win because the Chiefs win, the Swifties tune in, ratings go up, revenue goes up.
The football, you think?
Yeah, I don't understand the motive.
15-year-old girls to be watching. That's what they need.
Like when the football industry looks at growth, when the football industry looks at growth opportunities, there's insane. Like other countries and 15-year-old girls are growth opportunities because they've got such, a hold on everything else, and Taylor Swift helps with that.
That is
Edward brings up a good point to bring it all back to Christian nationalism. The Kansas City kicker is a Christian nationalist adjacent.
Not even adjacent.
What is his name?
Just
Butker. Yeah, what was the thing he said at like a commencement speech that
he basically said that women should stay at home and raise kids and not have jobs.
Mm-hmm.
They want to.
Yeah.
Kind of wish I had done that with my life instead of pittering it away the way I did.
I feel like I am doing that with my life.
I don't know. That'd be great. Family first.
Yeah, absolutely.
The refs are okay. John Aford, the refs are corrupt. Roger Goodall is corrupt. Check his back. Okay, I don't. Here's what I just don't get about it. And truly, I want to know. granted that they're corrupt. Why are they corrupt on behalf of the Kansas City Chiefs?
Because Taylor Swift brings audience.
That is so insane. The number, the size of the NFL audience is massive. The size of the Super Bowl audience.
And how is it going to get bigger? Where are the growth opportunities?
Not with
if you were analyzing where could we get more fans? Doug, you're suggesting that they're satisfied with what they have. Like, oh, okay, we're big enough. No, they're not.
No,
they're never satisfied with that. So where do you get more fans? If you already own all of if this massive audience, where are the growth opportunities?
They're not with 12-year-old girls. No, that is so insane to think. If you were sitting around at the NFL and you were like, hey, we need to figure out how to expand our audience. We need to get into younger people. We need to get into new communities.
It's not something that has intentionally happened. It's something that.
Okay, well, then hold on a minute. Because
they haven't specific. No. They did not say, okay, well, we got to get one of our players dating the biggest pop star in the world.
It was just lucky. So then they all said
they jumped on it.
So here's what you're telling me. Just to be clear, Roger Goodell, who runs the NFL, Goodell, all of the referees who are assigned to Kansas City Chief games, all said, "Hey, hang on a minute. That tight end is dating Taylor Swift." And the NFL wants to expand its market share, so we need to not fulfill our obligations in order for that team to win, so that the NFL 15 years from now can have more young girls be long-term. And that wasn't intentional. It's just accidentally happening, but it's all specifically to benefit Kansas City. Have I got it here?
That's the conspiracy theory that people have. Yes.
That's nuts. That's not even a good one.
That's not
even a good one. Come on.
Much like this episode of the podcast.
That's not even. I mean, look, if you had said stuff like they do with baseball or basketball or something like, look, they want the big markets. That's what they want. But the NFL hasn't needed that in a long time. Remember when all that concussion stuff was happening and football was over? I don't know, like 7 years ago or something like that.
Oh wow!
And there were
done.
boycotts and the kneeling and the anti-patriotic thing and all of that. The NFL's like, well, we're going to miss Pac-Man that thing. We'll just gobble that up and keep moving. We're just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Like the thing the NFL does not need is some lucky break that one player is dating one musician. Like they have figured out how to bed this thing into the spirit and soul of America in a way that every bar you go into is just full of it.
Your team didn't lose to the Chiefs, and so I can see how you would think that there's not a conspiracy against all the other teams. Just bought and paid for.
Yeah, because it's not that a team actually gets lucky or has great success or has great talent or puts together a great franchise for a couple of years in a row. That's probably not it.
No.
It's probably, that the refs.
Although I did see it, maybe it was baseball, but they fired an ump because they figured out he was betting on games.
That was
it was basketball. Yeah, so that's a thing I would be more like that's definitely happening.
Yep.
Like all the online gambling, they're throwing some games.
Oh, I would think so. Yeah.
Oh, so easy for a basketball referee
to
influence, especially point spreads. Super easy.
And player, I mean, especially in basketball where games kind of don't matter and you can bet like crazy on some rando game and teams slow it down, coaches slow it down. Like there's all this point spread business that is all that if you were corrupt, but I don't know.
I mean, so Elon's here to check it out and make sure that we're not.
Elon will get to the bottom of it.
is in the waste and abuse in sports gambling. Is there, and who's the other team playing Taylor Swift's boyfriend's team?
The Philadelphia Eagles.
Do they have a legitimate chance? Like,
Yes.
Real skill?
Yes. Yeah, it should be a good game.
Oh. Well, okay, what's your prediction, Rob? Let's do it now. You asked for them, and then we got into nonsense.
I'm predicting the Chiefs will win because of a score made after a controversial call in the last drive of the game.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think come from behind Chiefs. Mahomes turns it on when he has to, and it'll be some crazy. He's jumping sideways, throwing it, and then Travis Kelce laterals it, and then some magical thing.
All right, Eagles by 6.
Love it.
Excellent. I got Chiefs by 4.
Okay. You got a number, Dan?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Don't do that.
Right. And Yabbits is going to carry the spread difference. And if it's Chiefs by less than 4 and Eagles by less than 6, Yabbits gets the money.
AI says 31 to 27. Did you just ask Chat GPT, Rob, as well for how to bet on the game?
I might.
Well, hey, thanks for everyone in the chat.
AI.
Thanks, John, Peggy, Yabbits. You have one more AI comment, Doug? Or
Julie, Spamberger.
Yeah, Spamberger. Thanks, bud.
Shanna.
Gary.
Sue.
And, clearly some people that might not agree with us on some things in the chat, but thanks for hanging out with us.
Did we miss some good ones? Was there a little saucy in there?
Sean X, though, called us sad losers.
We got Soy Boys, classic.
I am absolutely sad.
I can't actually do soy. It hurts my tummy.
Yeah, we were Soy Boys. We were called Soy Boys by somebody. Yeah, it's great. Harold.
Boys.
Yeah, whole group of folks.
Brainwashed idiots. We got that one. Did you see that? Or?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
And the 80s called. They want their mullet back. So.
It's a strong look. I mean, the people that hey, how about the Grammys? We didn't even talk about the Grammys. How about Kendrick Lamar going full on? Did you guys watch the Grammys?
No.
It's a music awards, and Kendrick Lamar is a musician, and I think he won Song of the Year or Album of the Year or something.
Record of the Year.
Record of the Year, and he went full Canadian tuxedo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love
jean
that.
jacket, pants, and denim hat.
Wow,
man! Oh, just finally.
Yeah.
I mean, you throw that in there with a mullet. Hey, and do you know who won Rock Album of the Year?
No.
The Rolling Stones.
What?
Yeah, the Rolling Stones.
Still got
do you
it.
Know who won? You know who won Rock Performance of the Year?
Oh gosh, is it gonna make me mad?
The Beatles.
Shut up! Seriously?
Yeah, the Beatles put out that AI
The
thing.
AI thing? What?
Wow.
And the Rolling Stones put out basically a Pro Tools version of an album. And in 2025, when Donald Trump was reelected president, the voters for the Grammys said best rock and roll album was the Rolling Stones and best rock performance was the Beatles. I am not even kidding you. Like, I know rock music has moved from the center, to the pop music and hip hop music and country music dominates, but there's nobody better than the Beatles, 2 of whom are dead, to perform a rock in 2025. And the Rolling Stones put out the best rock and roll album.
That's wild. I mean, that's why I just don't watch anymore. I don't know who half the people are.
This? But I think Beyonce won
best country album.
Country album.
And then Beyonce won a country album award. It's just craziness. I mean, we should stop voting. We should stop voting. Vote Common Good right now just says stop voting on everything. Don't vote on best albums. Don't vote on candidates. We just need to. It just needs to stop. It's totally gone.
It's out of control.
Oh, Alex says Benson Boone's performance. I didn't. I must have missed that part.
He's
tried
the
watching
young
it.
guy that flips and spins off things. He jumped
Like a
off the
parkour?
piano. Yeah, he parkours off the piano
Wow.
in like a onesie.
He was wearing like a jumpsuit, right?
Yeah.
Wow. All denim?
It looked spandex.
Okay. All right. Well.
All right. I have a meeting I gotta get to.
We've
All
done
right.
it all. Sports, politics, entertainment. This
Your
podcast.
one-stop
just spans-
shop. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks to all of you for being